All right. Mine kind of zoned out there. I'm sorry. My screen did, but we're here at Office Hours Welcome presented by SchoolRubric. So we are super excited to be here. I know I'm excited to host my very first one. I know I was talking about how I was a little nervous just because we have so many great people here with us, and Office Hours is all about answering those questions from educators, administrators, and with different podcasters. So we're all excited to be here to bring you those. So we're gonna do some quick introductions here as we begin. So Naomi, I know we know each other very well because you are obviously the co-host of the Innovative Teacher Podcast. Do you mind kind of giving us a little run through for people who maybe don't know you?
Definitely. So for those who don't know me, I am Naomi Meredith. I'm a former classroom teacher turned current K through 5 STEM teacher, and almost 10 years of being in education. And I love helping teachers implement STEM and technology in their own classrooms.
Thank you so much, Naomi. That was absolutely perfect. Now we're going to turn it over to one of my favorite people ever on Twitter, which is Chris. Every time I see one of his tweets, I know it's going to be something that I can use in my classroom and get my students excited. So, Chris, could you do a little quick introduction for us?
Sure thing, Spencer. Thanks a lot for having me again. Thanks to SchoolRubric and all the great stuff that they're doing to help educators. I mean, that's what this is all about. That's what I'm all about. I mean, I'm helping the kids in my classroom. I'm a high school math teacher, but I love helping my kids and helping other educators realize that there's ways to connect all that stuff that's out there in the real world with the stuff that they're doing in the classroom. And yeah, you said it, Spencer. I love sharing those things on social media, especially Twitter, and I'm always happy to help.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Chris. And then our last person is Emine, who was actually on the Innovative Teacher Podcast, episode 32, talking all about engineering design process. So we know she knows a lot. And the crazy part is for her day is just beginning. So we're going to let her do just a little introduction here on what she does.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. My name's Emine. I'm calling all the way from New Delhi, India. I started as a classroom teacher in Detroit, and I opened up a STEM center here in New Delhi. So I would have kids from all over Delhi come to me, and I would teach them all things STEM. And currently, I am running my blog, Sprouting STEMs, and I'm happy to be here. Happy to connect with people from all over.
Awesome. I am so excited as we kind of begin into our topic tonight. And the best part about being the host is I get to kind of introduce that topic. And of course, we're talking STEM with all of us awesome STEM educators here. And we're talking remote learning strategies, the strategies that maybe worked for us, maybe that didn't work so well. And really, this is so important as it's all about, that disciplinary. We're able to use STEM from all different kinds of curriculum, whether it's math, science, engineering, and we can put it almost anywhere. So, it really does apply to all educators today as we kind of go into our topic. And our format is we're going to be doing 2 different questions where we're all just going to do a little bit of answering. And then we got a little something extra for you guys at the end. We all have pictures that we picked out of different artifacts that we're going to kind of talk through. And I know I'm a visual learner, so I'm very excited about that part as we move forward. And we encourage you guys to chat and comment and kind of let us know what you are thinking, and we will try to view those and take those into consideration as we begin our fun little journey here. So our first question comes from Kayla, who is a STEM coordinator, and she was actually on the Innovative Teacher Podcast a while back. So we are going to listen to that question and digest it.
Hey, I am Kayla Norval, and I'm a STEM coordinator and also owner and founder of Right in the Middle. And my question is, creating engaging strategies via remote learning is challenging. So as we transition to the classroom, what are some effective strategies that you've used to facilitate student thinking, engagement, and problem solving from remote learning?
Awesome. What a great question. I know as we are transitioning into some different learning here, this is one of the questions that we all probably get asked a lot. So, Chris, what are your thoughts on this question as we're kind of moving forward with remote learning strategies?
Yeah, it's definitely a great question. I'm so glad that Kayla asked this because us as educators, I mean, we're all at like different stages of going back to the classroom, and some of us are, just trying to figure out how that's going to work, especially after we all had to like jump into the deep end, 10 months, a year ago from now. But here we are, and you know what? These kids are excited to get back, and as soon as we do get back with them, now, or if we already have, these kids, they're a little bit, I think, nervous. They're a little bit subdued. My kids we're just starting back, hybrid style. And but I tell you what, I've been able to bring in a lot of the curiosity, the creativity, the wonder that I was able to build with them in remote learning right into the classroom. And we still have some kids that are virtual. And we still have some kids that are at home on some of those days. So it's so important that we find ways to make sure that every kid matters, whether they're in the classroom physical or in the classroom virtual. Every kid needs to matter. And so that's creating projects that the kids at home and kids in the classroom can do at the same time. How do we connect those things? And to me, that's the biggest thing. Every kid still needs to know that they matter, whether they're in the room or not in the room. That's always what it's always been about, right? And
Chris, I love that you said that, because I feel like that really speaks to STEM. Every kid gets to put their personality in STEM, and that's such an engaging feel for STEM. That's the part that's authentic, engaging for STEMs. So from that, Emine, what are some different ways maybe you have seen some engagement strategies in those different remote learning strategies? I know things look very different for you, so this is going to be a great perspective for our listeners tonight.
Yeah, I mean, different but the same. My school has been all virtual, and honestly, they're leaving it up to the schools to decide what they want to do. And we might be virtual for another year. We don't know. So we're just kind of taking it as it comes. But remote learning has really taught me to slow down my instruction, and also to engage with my students in dialogue, because talking online just doesn't work. So a really quick strategy for teachers out there that are listening, there's an institute called the Right Question Institute. And it was just a quick thing that they teach that really shifts the dynamics in the classroom from being the sage on stage to guide on the side. So I was able to get low cost electronic kits sent out to all the kids, so that while we're working virtually, they're able to build small circuits, make things start to move. So I was able to get that hands-on component back in. But let's say we're talking about gears. I would post the focus, this is not a wheel. And then for 5 to 10 minutes, all they're doing is asking me questions. Well, if it's not a wheel, what are the spiky things around it? If I put two of them together, what happens? Why are there different sizes of this? And through inquiry and through asking questions, they're kind of able to figure out, okay, there's a hole in the middle. Maybe something can go in there. Maybe that's where an axle can go. And it just moves everything from me saying, okay, this is a gear, this is where your axle goes, this is where you're supposed to fix your axle, this is how your gear ratio works. They're able, just through inquiry and asking questions, to figure out how those gears work, and they've taken complete ownership over their learning. So that's just one simple way that you can do, is to pose a focus and have students start to ask questions about that focus. And then at the end, after they've experimented, go back and research that and fully answer it.
Yes. And I mean, I absolutely love that you talked about that, because I feel like inquiry, and I could say that all day to people, what does that look like for students? How can we take this and make this something in remote learning settings? So like websites like that are such a good tool for remote learning. I feel like as we move to the classroom, we can say, well, this is an enrichment for students. We can use this in so many different ways, as we do that. So Naomi, I know a lot of your different strategies, but could you maybe add on to kind of some of these remote learning strategies that we have talked about so far?
Yeah, definitely. So my school year has been interesting. I have been 100% in person most of the school year. I was only remote for maybe about a month, and then we still have had classes go into quarantine. But the biggest thing that I have found that's been successful online and also in the classroom is keeping things simple. Doesn't mean that your instruction is watered down at all, but keeping the material simple, your directions clear, very direct, and you can get to the meat of that lesson lessons. So that has been super successful. Even when I've had to plan something on the fly, a class has gone into quarantine that morning, the more simple, the better. And that we can all have a still great experience when we're exploring all those different STEM challenges.
Yes, and I think the exploring part is, absolutely incredible. We had a question in the comments, and it's one that I think we should address because it's a great question, and I know we've all had to deal with it in here. So muting and unmuting, is it worth it for questions or just using chat if you have large groups like 30 plus kids more when you're doing, informal education? So what are some thoughts on this? Chris, let's take it back to you since you were the first person that was able to talk.
Yeah, and thanks for the question, Aaron. Aaron is a terrific educator, by the way, and has a super book if anybody hasn't checked it out, STEM Superheroes. But I teach ninth graders and eighth graders. So for me, sometimes they just don't want to talk. And so we use the chat box. And for me, I have to make that a priority. I have to say, all right, get your chat bot fingers ready. Get your chat box. Here we go. We're going to see what you got in the chat box. And even just like right at the start, you're saying, give me a number 1 to 5, how you feeling today? And just giving them easy things to just like break the ice, because middle schoolers, high schoolers, they don't want to be the first one, right? I mean, they don't want to be that one to break it. So you just give them easy things to do like that. And for some of the other ages, maybe some of the other guests can speak to that. But for me, my kids, and sometimes they unmute, and sometimes they love to tell me stories. I mean, I love to ask them, what do you think of this? How could this work? How could we figure this out? Getting them, but as much as we can, but also really, really giving those kids that option, but encouraging them to somehow participate.
Yes, and I completely agree. I know, elementary is a little bit different, but I think the key word that you kind of said there is that you're building that relationship, like we talked about earlier, making those kids feel important no matter what, and checking in with them and saying, how can we make this learning effective? So Emine, what are maybe some strategies you kind of use with that muting and unmuting?
It depends on the platform you're using. So on Microsoft Teams, you have your channels, right? So you'll have one team and then you can break them out into different channels. So if you have a group of 40 kids, you can have, let's say, 8 different channels and then put 5 in there, and then unmuting isn't a problem, right? And the same goes with Zoom. I know some districts don't allow breakout rooms to happen, but that's one way that you can kind of combat that. Let's say breakout rooms aren't allowed, then Jamboards are perfect for that, right? So you can have big Jamboards open with your focus question in the middle, and then they can just start putting up their Post-it notes and asking their questions that way. And each Jamboard can be dedicated towards a group of kids. So you're still able to break them out into groups, but you still have them in one space. So there are ways to go around that. I think a lot of that is setting norms and procedures, right? Like at the beginning, I would have to play a Zoom etiquette game with my kids and teach them when it was appropriate to turn their mic on and off. But I think it really just depends on the platform you're using. But online, if you can get them into small groups and to interact with each other, the more they're able to engage in dialogue with each other, that's just going to make the learning even more meaningful, because they need that time to just like be together and be intellectual and talk about their learning. So
yes, and I love all those different ideas you said, and I know for me too, personally, I love Jamboard, and I like to give my kids a lot of choice, and I think like what you said speaks a lot to that. When it came to remote learning strategies, and I would use Jamboard, Flipgrid. I mean, I try to pull every single trick I had in the bag to be able to say, what is a way I can get you communicating with me, and we can kind of, know this learning is happening and make it authentic as possible. So Naomi, if you'd like to kind of add to that, I feel like they did a pretty good job, but I know you use some really creative strategies during remote learning to mute and
I agree with Emine, especially with the younger kids and even older kids too. Setting up those expectations and norms are very important, and even teaching them the tools. I had little signs that I would show them different tools along the way. So especially the younger students, knowing what the chat is and how it's used. My kindergartners were very excited about learning about the emojis that you can post. I got lots of little hearts that day, which was very exciting. But those norms are super great. With the older students, students. Pear Deck was really successful for me. Another way that students can respond to a lesson and engage and interact. The free version is great, so definitely check that out, and just another way to mix up your lessons.
Yes, thank you so much, Naomi. And I know Erin, she's absolutely incredible. So thank you, Erin, for that question. She has awesome books about life science and cow farts. And we got to talk to her one of our episodes, or she did a little tidbit in one of our episodes one time. So it was really good to hear from her. So thank you so much, Erin. So it really seems like when we're talking about this question one, we're looking at, those different strategies that connect students to the curriculum, make it authentic as possible when we have that distance. So which is going to lead us to our next question. But before we go to our next question, I want to remind you that office hours is on every Tuesday at 8 p.m. And you need to make sure you subscribe so you know that. At SchoolRubric, follow them at SchoolRubric_SR on Twitter. And our next question comes from Anita Goodwin, a second grade teacher and a green screen specialist. I can't say that 10 times if I wanted to. Play the video.
I'm Anita Goodwin, and I blog at goodwinovate.com. I have all links to my social media for you when to check any of those out there. But I have today's question for you. Remote learning has looked different almost everywhere this year. How has remote learning looked for you? As we transition back to the classroom, what are some key takeaways from your experience that relate to STEM education?
Thank you so much, Anita. That was such a great question. You can find her at goodinnovations.com. And I love this question because I'm a firm believer in everything kind of happens for a reason, and what we take away and what we can grow from it is what's most important. So I know I had a bunch of key takeaways, when I'm looking at remote learning and moving back into the classroom. Naomi, what are some key takeaways you had from remote learning as we move back into the class?
So one of the biggest things that I've seen, I'm sure many other teachers have seen this as well, is that resilience in students, that they are more adaptable than we think, and that they are so willing to try new things, and they have learned so many different technology skills from this and being able to be creative with what they have. And I've seen that back in the classroom, and they've been able to help each other problem solve a lot more in more effective ways. So that has been so amazing to see in the kids. And also, when you are teaching online, the use of visuals and simple directions, as I talked about the simplicity before, but those visuals are still very important when you're teaching online and also in person. So using those strategies as well has made that transition a lot easier. And so it was very seamless when we were all together, back together in the winter time, so which was super great.
I love how you said like that technology piece too, because for one of my biggest takeaways was that, what I can do with technology now in my classroom is substantially, greater than where it maybe was last year, because maybe I didn't have that capability in that time, and I feel like kids learn so much about technology. So going from that, Chris, I know high school looks a little bit different, but what are some key takeaways maybe you saw for your math classroom and how STEM can relate back to that classroom now?
Yeah, definitely a great question here. And to me, the biggest thing is really two things. Number one, we've had that opportunity to talk about problem solving for the past year almost. This pandemic is a big problem, but problems present the opportunity for solutions. And so problem solving is a huge topic that now, anytime you want to talk about problem solving now, teachers, you have like the easiest opportunity to say, we just lived through this giant problem. Everybody helped look for solutions. Guess what? We can find solutions to things, and we can find solutions to whatever's coming in the future. Whatever happens, yeah, it's a problem, but it's also an opportunity to innovate, opportunity to create, opportunity to stretch our minds, to persevere, to work hard. But the other thing that I would say is this, though, and I've seen this just with my students, and there's a certain level of confidence that they need right now as they come back to this, where they feel like, they've just had a hard time for these last bunch of months. And it's been hard, their technology doesn't work and things like that. They haven't got to like speak up in class. They haven't got to be around their friends a lot. And so they're just lacking a lot of confidence. And so as much as I can, I'm saying like, hey, they're geniuses. Hey, they're all-stars. Hey, they're how we doing? Fist bumps, high fives, fake ones, like start a class, end a class, even virtual. I mean, I'm like fake fist bumping the kids at home and just getting them pumped up, excited, because we need that. These kids need just that confidence to help grow out of what we're doing. So.
Yes, and I love how you said problem solution, because that is the biggest key to STEM. All STEM curriculum revolves around problem solution, and it's all around us. So Emine, I know you are clear across the world. So how has this looked for you on key takeaways from STEM education as we go back into the classroom?
It really taught me like less is more, number one, and the importance of community, and building those relationships, not just with the kids, but also with the parents, and making sure, especially in the beginning, that we were really all on the same page as to, okay, this is going to be a really big learning curve for all of us. So we have to be patient, and we can't expect a lot in the beginning. And as the time went on, we got a lot better at onboarding even new students, for example, and making sure, like, if we had a new student enrolled in the school, they were getting a one-on-one, like 30-40 minute session with that teacher, maybe once a week, just to get to know the teacher. Right. So not forgetting that behind the screen, we have a little kid, and just like what Chris said, who is missing the whole experience of being with their friends, being with their peers, which is so important, which is as important as the academics, which this has really taught us, the social aspect of school. So making sure that we allow opportunities for that to happen, and we try to integrate the social aspect into the day as much as the academic.
Yes, and I mean, with that social aspect, I feel like you could do so many cool technology things. Like, I know, Emine, some of your students created a little podcast, and I remember they and that was like, that's a really cool piece.
Couple of them, they've got one was actually featured in the New York Times, which was really cool. It's called Newsy Jacuzzi. Yeah.
That is really cool. And I know
they're doing amazing.
So when you said that, I had to point that out because I thought that was really cool. We have another great question though, from the audience. So Charles is wondering, what was an early STEM failure and how did you learn from that experience? Which, wow, what a great question, because I can't tell you how many times I've done a STEM project and I'm like, that did not go how I wanted it to. But I'm going to pass this question on to Chris first. Chris, what are some failures and how did you learn from that experience?
I think we all experienced failures at the start. So, for me, of course, it's just how do you get materials into kids' hands? I mean, you can't always. So, I mean, that first, problem was really, something again to solve. How do you do that? And so then teachers, and STEM teachers are great. Teachers are great. We adapt, right? So we got to find ways to say, well, my kids might not have every single material, so let's just use any materials you got. Let's make our things more wide open. And I think that's, that solution is also something that then we can move off of, here when we get back to classrooms, realize that let's make these things wide open.
Definitely, especially in I still make failures as well in my classroom for sure. I often get way better at the lesson with the kids the fourth time around when I see the fourth group. But when noticing how to use the materials and seeing the ways students modify their designs, they come up with ways that I never think of, and they take the lesson sometimes in better ways than I had planned. So it might be my failure of planning, but they always discover great ways to be innovative and make the lesson even better, which has been awesome.
Yes, and I feel like that's so important. So I appreciate, you guys saying that, and taking that question from the audience. So now we're going to move on to what I've been excited for the whole time, and that is the visual piece. I'm a visual learner, so we're going to look at some different pictures that we have collected beforehand, and we're going to kind of go through them and talk a little bit about them, and it's kind of like our little share out, so to speak. So we are going to get started with this, and our first person is Emine, and I love this picture that she was able to share this. Could you tell us a little bit more about this and kind of what is going on in this picture?
Yes. So again, this is from an organization called Project Zero, and Project Zero comes up with thinking routines that are specifically related to STEM and makerspace education. So originally, makerspace education was designed for agency, how to teach children or students to take ownership of the systems designed in their lives, right? So if a system is designed, it's not serving us anymore, we can redesign it. So this is the first step in doing that. And this activity is called Parts, Purposes, and Complexities. It's a toy deconstruction activity. So kids would bring in their own old toys that they didn't want anymore. And I would give them the tools and they would disassemble it, and we would label all the parts that they saw. And what happens is they already had this was a 7 or 8 year old that did this. What happens is they already have a little bit of background knowledge because we did a little bit of robotics. But what this teaches them is they'll take a couple things apart. They'll see the big things, maybe the motors, the LED lights. Those are things that they know. And I'll say, but keep going, keep going, keep going, keep looking. What else do you find? And over the course of 20 minutes on their own, they're like, oh, I see this screw is holding this together. I see this battery is powering this with these lights. I see that this wing is here. Oh, I see that they put that this head is here. So it teaches them to look closely at things. It teaches them how to use tools properly. It teaches them how their toys are working. But it also teaches them that all systems are interconnected and interdependent at a very, very, very small level. And then we can take it even further. Like then from here, another activity that I do with them is how does the fruit get from the farm to your house? How does that system look? And what in that system can we fix? So yeah, again, it's from Project Zero. It's another Harvard-backed organization, and they have amazing, easy, no-cost thinking routines to implement in your gen ed classroom that are completely STEM focused.
What an absolute awesome project. I love this photo. I mean, I absolutely do. So thank you, Emine. We're gonna transition to Chris now, and I love that Chris took a picture of the tweet because I feel like it really captures, that remote learning aspect and kind of what he was able to accomplish here. So, Chris, could you tell us a little bit more about this photo?
Yeah, and definitely, and it also fits right along with that question from Charles earlier about an early STEM fail too. I mean, you think of how do you explain something like the surface area of a sphere when you're trying to do that remotely, and how do you make it tangible for kids? And the formula is just 4 times pi times radius squared. Well, pi times radius squared is a circle. So you peel a piece of fruit, and all that fruit peeling should cover 4 circles, 4 pi r squared. And so, just looking for those simple things you can do, again, using anything that a kid might have at home. But you know what? There was also some kids that just couldn't do it. One kid said, I don't have any fruit, Mr. Woods. So we're like, okay, so let's problem solve this. How could we do that? What do you got? What do you got that's round? What can you take apart? What can you peel? And we came up with a solution. I can't even remember it right now, but we just got to do what we got to do sometimes. And it's a simple thing, and look for those simple things.
I feel like that speaks to remote learning so much. We got to do what we got to do and figure it out. And I think this is such a cool visual for kids, especially for math components when kids are doing that, because, visual learning is so helpful for kids. And we all know that as STEM educators. Next up, we got Naomi, and she has 2 awesome photos that she was saying earlier how she was like, these were, taken by the kids that was taking other projects. So hats off to them for taking great photos. Naomi, could you tell us a little bit more about that?
So the kids sent these to me in Seesaw after our lesson. So with the younger students, we had these engineer inspiration boards that related to a theme that we were learning about. These are 2 separate lessons, but using whatever they had at home, students use this inspiration to decide how to recreate it themselves. So it was pretty exciting. The kids were really, I'm sure you have seen, excited about what they have used around home, sharing all of their different toys and different ways to build. Some kids use Play-Doh, like you see, Lego. I had kids bring their own cardboard, all sorts of fun stuff. So it was really great to help them engage and communicate while we were building, and then seeing some of their creations afterwards.
And it's so neat to see the pieces tied together and see the results of that. So thank you so much, Naomi. And I'm excited because I actually got to do a couple pictures for these, little pictures here too. So I put 2 of them because I couldn't decide. And my left one is all about that mystery. You know, even though we're going back to in-person remote learning, a lot of times I put random items in a bag and I gave kids challenges on what they could build. And still, kids came up with just the coolest things. And I still do that in my room now. In the picture on the right, you're seeing me get way too excited in the first couple weeks there of quarantine, where we worked on some Rube Goldberg machines. What are some simple things you could do for Rube Goldberg machines around your house? So even doing those little fun things like that, I think those things are things we can do in the classroom now, or do as extensions, you know, at home with our parents, you know, and have the kids kind of build STEM things that way. How long did it take
for that to happen?
Oh, that's like that's upwards of a couple hours. I'm not gonna lie about that. And I was excited that my wife got on because I wasn't sure she would. So yes, that took a lot longer than I thought. So what a great conversation we had today between strategies, key takeaways, and we even got to look at some awesome photos. I know I enjoyed this conversation. It was so good to hear the different types of strategies we could use, the key takeaways from everybody. But next, we want to talk about maybe some upcoming events real quick, and then we'll be able to say adios till next week as we move on. So Rock Your Class Kahoot is coming up March 11th, 2:30 Eastern Standard Time. It's Spanish. This is where you compete all over the world with all kinds of different classes. Such a cool way to get your students excited about Spanish if that is something you are teaching. Next, we have Educators Without Borders with Tracy, and Tracy's part of Office Hours, so it's absolutely great to see her there. That is March 18th. So make sure you mark your calendars for that, because I know I'm going to be listening to that. I'm really excited about that one as it comes up. And then lastly, we got another person from Office Hours in the principals. The principals corner there as we move forward. That is going to be a great show. So mark your calendars for that as we, kind of move forward. SchoolRubric has so many awesome things coming up, and Office Hours is back next week, same time. Shay and Pop are talking live broadcast, teacher broadcasts with us and what they do for that. So thank you so much for our awesome guests for coming today. I had so much fun, and I hope you guys did too. Thank you so much. Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you for watching SchoolRubric on YouTube. Make sure that you like, follow, and subscribe in order to stay looped in on all of our diverse collection of shows, interviews, panels, tutorials, and more from educators around the globe. And visit us at SchoolRubric.com for even more great content, such as our online articles, Interact magazine, featured podcasts, and more. Thank you.